The low hum of the war room's holographic table filled the tense silence. Commander Reyna Carter stood rigid, eyes locked on the swirling blue figure before her, Xyler, the Galactic Council's envoy, tall and dismissive. His eyes, cold and reptilian, scanned the room with contempt. "You humans are laughably naive," Xyler sneered. His voice slithered through the air, each word laced with arrogance. "Do you truly believe Earth stands a chance against the might of the Galactic Empire? You're a small rock on the edge of a forgotten solar system." Commander Carter's face remained impassive, though her pulse quickened. She was known for her unflinching resolve, her ability to remain calm in the face of overwhelming odds. Today would be no different. Behind her, Lieutenant Anders shifted, nervous energy crackling in the air as he tapped on his data pad. He was young, brilliant, but inexperienced when it came to these kinds of high-stakes negotiations. "You underestimate us," Carter replied, her voice calm but carrying an edge. "Earth is not the easy conquest you think it is." Xyler chuckled, a hollow sound that echoed through the chamber. "We've conquered systems far more advanced than yours. The Galactic Council sees no need to entertain your empty threats." The hologram flickered, and the map of Earth's defenses reappeared on the table. Anders cleared his throat, stepping forward. "Our defense systems are adaptive, Commander. They've never seen anything like our tech." Carter gave him a subtle nod, appreciating his initiative. "Lieutenant Anders is right. You've studied us from a distance, but you've never faced us on the ground, in our elements. Earth is a death world, Xyler. Its environments breed survivors, and we've learned to turn that to our advantage." Xyler's expression darkened. "A death world? Another one of your myths to bolster morale. Let me remind you, Commander, that no amount of human spirit will stand against our fleets. You have 24 hours to surrender or face annihilation." The hologram vanished, and silence settled once more in the room. Carter exhaled, turning to face Anders and the rest of her command team. The weight of what was coming pressed down on her, but she would not let it show. "Do they really think we're that weak?" Anders muttered, pacing in frustration. "They do," Carter replied, her voice steely. "And that's exactly why we have a chance. They've misjudged us, just like every other force that's tried to conquer Earth." The room darkened as the war table shifted to display Earth's orbital defenses. Satellite grids, missile silos buried deep beneath mountain ranges, and the planet's most guarded secret, a weapon Carter hoped they'd never have to use, flickered into view. It wasn't just about the tech. It was about survival, and humans had always been good at that. Carter's eyes swept across her team, the tension building like a storm on the horizon. "We have less than a day to prepare. Anders, get me a full systems report on our orbital platforms. The rest of you, start mobilizing our ground defenses. If they want to test Earth, we'll make sure they never forget it." As her officers hurried to their stations, Carter stood alone for a moment, staring at the holographic map of Earth. She could almost hear the distant rumble of the galactic fleet descending through the void. This wasn't the first time humanity had faced extinction. But it might be the last time they did so unprepared. Her fists clenched. "They think we're just a backwater planet," she muttered to herself. "They'll learn." And as the room around her buzzed with the urgency of preparation, Carter knew one thing for certain: humanity's fight for survival had just begun. The atmosphere in the command center buzzed with urgency, the hum of machinery merging with the frenzied conversations of officers preparing for war. Lieutenant Anders stood at his terminal, eyes glued to a cascading flow of data. Commander Reyna Carter paced the floor behind him, her brow furrowed in concentration as the seconds ticked down to the Galactic Empire's ultimatum. "Status report, Anders," Carter ordered, her voice cutting through the noise like a blade. "Orbital defense systems are at 78% capacity," Anders replied, his fingers flying over the console. "We're still recalibrating the Eastern satellite array, but everything else is ready for full activation." Carter nodded, but the knot in her stomach tightened. 78% wasn't enough. "Push the team harder. We need full coverage before they arrive." As Anders relayed the orders, the room's main screen flickered to life. A series of red dots appeared, hovering at the edge of the solar system, Galactic Council warships. Each dot represented a vessel capable of wiping out entire continents. The sight was enough to make even the most battle-hardened officers pause. "They're moving faster than we anticipated," Captain Vega remarked from her station. She was one of Carter's most trusted officers, known for her no-nonsense attitude and tactical brilliance. "At this rate, they'll be within striking distance in 12 hours. Carter's jaw tightened. "Then we have 12 hours to turn this into a fight they won't forget." Vega raised an eyebrow, her lips curling into a half-smile. "I like the sound of that." The screen shifted again, this time displaying the defensive grid surrounding Earth. Hundreds of satellites formed a protective web around the planet, each armed with energy cannons, missile systems, and electromagnetic shields. It was impressive, but Carter knew it wouldn't be enough against the sheer number of ships bearing down on them. "What about the ground forces?" Carter asked, turning to Lieutenant Richards, head of planetary defense. Richards straightened, tapping on his tablet. "All major cities are fortified. Evacuation protocols are in place for non-combatants, and militia units are stationed in key locations. We're ready to engage if they break through the orbital grid." Carter's eyes narrowed. "They will break through. This isn't about holding the line, it's about survival." The room fell silent for a moment as her words hung in the air, the weight of this situation settling over everyone like a cold fog. Each officer knew the odds. The Galactic Empire had crushed planets far more advanced than Earth, yet Carter refused to let defeat be an option. "Commander," Anders interrupted, his voice tense. "I'm detecting an anomaly in the fleet's formation." Carter stepped closer to his console, her sharp gaze scanning the data. "What kind of anomaly?" "They're not advancing in standard attack formation. It's irregular," Anders said, his brow furrowed in confusion. "It's almost like they're probing for something." "They're testing us," Carter murmured. "They want to see how we respond before committing to a full-scale assault." "Do we engage?" Richards asked, his hand hovering over the activation panel for Earth's orbital defenses. Carter paused, her mind racing through the possibilities. If they revealed their full hand too soon, the Empire would adapt. But if they waited too long, Earth's defenses might not withstand the initial onslaught. It was a delicate balance. One wrong move, and everything would collapse. "Hold fire," she finally decided. "Let them think we're vulnerable." Vega frowned but didn't argue. She trusted Carter's instincts, even if they sometimes defied conventional military logic. "And when they commit?" Carter's lips curled into a grim smile. "We hit them with everything we've got." As the tension in the room mounted, Carter felt the weight of the coming battle pressing down on her shoulders. The Galactic Empire was expecting an easy victory, a quick subjugation of a backwater planet. What they didn't realize was that Earth was far more dangerous than it appeared. And humans? They were even more unpredictable. "They'll regret underestimating us," she said quietly, her voice filled with resolve. Suddenly, the room's lights flickered, and a low rumble echoed through the base. Anders' eyes widened as his console lit up with alarms. "Commander! We've got incoming. Multiple dropships just entered the atmosphere." Carter's pulse quickened, her muscles tensing in anticipation. "Sound the alarm. Mobilize ground forces immediately." The battle had begun, and Earth would not go down without a fight. The dropships tore through the atmosphere like blazing comets, their fiery descent lighting up the night sky. Explosions echoed across the landscape as the first ships touched down on Earth's surface. Each impact shook the ground, sending tremors through the command center where Commander Raina Carter stood, her gaze locked on the holographic map displaying the unfolding chaos. "All ground units engage at will," she ordered, her voice steady despite the storm brewing around them. "Don't let them get a foothold." The holographic display showed red dots, enemy forces, spreading across major cities like a plague. Earth's defenses had been primed for this, but nothing could fully prepare them for the sheer scale of the assault. Alien war machines rumbled through the streets, towering above the human soldiers who rushed to intercept them. Lieutenant Anders frantically adjusted the satellite feeds, trying to capture every angle of the battle. "Commander, enemy forces have breached New London's perimeter. They're bringing in heavy armor. Our militia is getting torn apart." Carter's pulse quickened, but her expression remained composed. "Divert air support to New London. I want those tanks neutralized." Beside her, Captain Vega studied the tactical display. "It's not just New London. They've landed in Tokyo, Johannesburg, and Rio de Janeiro simultaneously. They're hitting us everywhere. They're spreading us thin." Carter muttered, pacing back and forth, eyes narrowing as she assessed the battlefield. It was a classic strategy: overwhelm the enemy by attacking on multiple fronts, forcing them to make desperate choices. But humans were not easily overwhelmed. "Commander!" Anders interrupted, his voice tense. "I've detected an energy surge in the Western Hemisphere. It's coming from the main fleet. I think they're charging their primary weapons." Carter froze for a split second, her mind racing. The Galactic Empire's warships were infamous for their planet-breaking cannons, massive energy weapons capable of leveling entire cities in a single strike. If they were about to use one, Earth's surface could be reduced to ash. "Vega," Carter said, turning to her second-in-command. "We need to hit that fleet before they fire." Vega's jaw clenched. "Our orbital defenses won't reach them in time." "Not if we wait," Carter replied, her mind already working through the possibilities. "But if we bait them into range—" "You want to provoke them into a closer attack?" Vega asked, eyes widening in realization. "It's our only shot," Carter said, determination hardening her tone. "If we can lure them in, we'll stand a chance of taking out their flagship. And without that, the rest of their fleet loses its command structure." Vega nodded, her usual steely resolve returning. "How do we bait them?" Carter turned back to Anders. "Anders, open a channel to their fleet." His fingers danced across the console, and a moment later the room filled with the crackling sound of an open transmission. Carter stepped forward, her voice ice-cold as she addressed the unseen enemy. "This is Commander Raina Carter of the Terran Defense Forces. You think you can destroy us from a distance? Come and face us up close if you dare." For a moment, there was only silence. The entire command center held its breath, the tension thick enough to cut with a knife. Then, a response crackled through. "Primitive arrogance," a guttural voice replied, dripping with disdain. "Your planet will burn regardless." Carter allowed herself a small, grim smile. "We'll see about that." The transmission ended, but the tension in the room didn't fade. Carter's gamble was audacious. If the Empire took the bait, Earth's orbital defenses would have a shot at neutralizing their command ship. If they didn't, well, humanity would find out just how much destruction the Empire could rain down. A low rumble shook the room, and Anders cursed under his breath as he stared at the screen. "Commander, they're moving. The fleet is advancing towards Earth." "They took the bait," Vega said, a fierce grin spreading across her face. "Good," Carter replied, her tone sharp. "Prepare all orbital platforms for full engagement. I want targeting solutions for the flagship the moment they're in range." As orders spread across the command center, the atmosphere shifted from dread to determination. The stakes were impossibly high, but Carter knew that was where humanity thrived. When pushed to the brink, they had a habit of fighting back harder than anyone expected. Minutes passed like hours as the enemy fleet drew closer. Each second felt like a countdown to oblivion, but Carter held her ground, her eyes never leaving the holographic display. Finally, the signal came. "They're in range," Anders confirmed, his voice taut with anticipation. "Fire!" Carter commanded, her voice cutting through the tension like a sword. In an instant, Earth's orbital platforms unleashed a torrent of energy beams and missile strikes, all aimed at the approaching fleet. Explosions erupted across the void of space, and on the display, several enemy ships blinked out of existence. But it wasn't enough. The Empire's flagship continued its advance, massive and ominous, its energy weapons still charging. "Come on," Carter muttered under her breath, willing the defenses to land the critical blow. And then, a massive explosion tore through the center of the screen. The flagship was hit, its shields buckling under the assault. For a heartbeat, it seemed to hang in the void, crippled but still dangerous. "Commander, we've disabled their flagship!" Vega shouted, elation breaking through the tension. Carter exhaled, relief washing over her for just a moment. But her eyes remained hard. The battle wasn't over yet, and the Empire wouldn't fall that easily. "Keep up the pressure," she ordered. "We're not done." The echo of the flagship's explosion still lingered in the air when Commander Reyna Carter stood at the observation window of the Terran Command Center. Below, the Earth was bathed in a faint glow from the orbital battle still raging above, but the flagship's defeat had bought them time. Time they desperately needed. Carter's reflection in the glass was a portrait of exhaustion, dark circles under her eyes, jaw set tight, but there was no room for rest. Behind her, the command center buzzed with activity. Every screen flickered with tactical data, reports flooding in from ground units and orbital defense platforms. Despite the small victory, the fight was far from over. "We crippled their flagship, but we've only slowed them down." Captain Vega's voice broke through Carter's thoughts as she stepped up beside her. "They'll regroup. And when they do, they'll come back harder." Carter nodded, never taking her eyes off the distant horizon. "That's what I'm counting on." Vega's brow furrowed. "You're hoping for a full-scale retaliation?" "We've been on the defensive since this started," Carter replied, her voice steady. "If we keep reacting, we'll lose. We need to make them think they're forcing us into a corner, but instead, we pull them right where we want them." Vega hesitated before speaking. "And where exactly do we want them, Commander?" Carter turned to face her, eyes sharp. "Right in our line of fire." The captain's lips twitched in what could have been a smile, but the weight of the situation quickly erased it. "You have a plan?" "A risky one," Carter admitted, stepping over to the holographic display. The planetary map showed the alien forces spreading like a virus across Earth's surface, with heavy concentrations around the major cities. "We need to funnel their forces into choke points, thin out their numbers. Then we hit their command structure again, hard." Vega crossed her arms, studying the map. "You're thinking urban warfare?" "Exactly. Use the cities as natural barriers. They've got numbers, but we have the terrain." Carter's eyes flicked over the display. "We cut off their reinforcements, isolate their strongest units, and turn this fight from a full-scale invasion into guerrilla warfare." Vega nodded slowly. "It's a solid strategy. But to do that, we'll need to mobilize every remaining asset." Carter's lips pressed into a thin line. "That includes the militia. Every able-bodied civilian who can hold a weapon." Vega flinched at that. "You're talking about sending untrained people into a war zone." "I'm talking about survival," Carter said, her tone firm. "If we don't stand together now, there won't be anything left to defend." Before Vega could respond, Anders rushed over from his station. His face was pale, his voice a mixture of excitement and fear. "Commander, we've intercepted communications from their fleet." Carter's attention snapped to him. "What did you find?" "They're pulling back," Anders explained, his hands trembling slightly. "Their forces on the ground are reorganizing. It's like they're retreating." "Retreating?" Vega echoed, incredulous. "Why would they?" A sudden realization dawned on Carter. Her heart skipped a beat as she pieced it together. "They're consolidating. They're not retreating, they're preparing for a second strike. A bigger one." Anders swallowed nervously. "That's not all. We've detected an energy buildup near Mars. It's massive, Commander. It looks like the Empire's bringing in their heavy artillery." Carter's fists clenched. "Planet breakers." Vega's face paled. "If they fire those, we won't be able to stop them. They'll vaporize entire continents." Silence gripped the room. The weight of what Anders had just revealed settled over the command center like a shroud. The Empire was escalating, and if they succeeded, Earth would be reduced to little more than rubble. "We can't let them get into firing position," Carter said, her voice calm but fierce. "How long until they're in range?" 20 minutes, maybe less," Anders replied, his voice tight with fear. Our orbital platforms can't reach them that far out. Carter took a deep breath, thinking fast. They had no orbital weapons capable of reaching the planet breakers while they charged. No conventional weapons, at least. Her mind raced through possibilities, strategies, anything that could turn the tide. Then, a dangerous idea formed. She turned to Vega. Get me in contact with General Reese at Lunar Command. Vega frowned. Lunar Command? The defense base on the moon? They'd been working on an experimental weapon, a railgun with enough power to punch through warship armor at extreme range. Carter's eyes gleamed with a mix of hope and desperation. It's never been tested in combat. But if we can fire it before the planet breakers get in range. Vega hesitated. It could work. Or it could overload and blow us all to hell. I'll take that chance, Carter said firmly. If we don't do something, we're already dead. Within moments, the communications channel to Lunar Command opened, General Reese's grizzled face appearing on the screen. Carter, he greeted gruffly. What's the situation? We need to fire the railgun, General. No, she said without preamble. The Empire's bringing in planet breakers, and we've got less than 20 minutes before they're in position to destroy Earth. Reese's expression darkened. The railgun's still in prototype phase, Reyna. We've barely run full diagnostics, let alone fired it in battle. Carter's eyes locked with his. I know it's a risk. But it's the only shot we have. For a moment, Reese remained silent, weighing the impossible decision. Then he gave a single nod. All right. We'll fire the damn thing. Carter turned back to the holographic map as the countdown began. The tension in the command center was suffocating, every second bringing the planet breakers closer to firing range. And in the silence, everyone held their breath. May the stars be on our side, Vega whispered. Carter's heart pounded as the clock ticked down. Everything hinged on one untested weapon, and the fate of humanity hung in the balance.